right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. The conversation still continues. Now we're talking about the model manifestos. Franklin Mukwanja is still here with me, Executive Director, CMD, that is Center for Multi-Party Democracy. Kevin Osido, Executive Director, County Governance Watch is here. And Juliet Murimi, Deputy Director, Vision 2030, Social and Political Pillar. Thank you so much for making time. So let's talk about the model manifestos now. And I'll start with you, Juliet.
Yes.
All politicians have somehow launched their manifestos at all different levels, the presidential level, the governor's level, all of them have launched them.
Sure.
Have you seen any that sort of aligns to Vision 2030? And what really were we meant to achieve by now, considering we're only 8 years away?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Trevor. I think I want to start by mentioning that even the political parties that have so far launched their manifestos have incorporated components of what the Vision 2030 requires. It is the first time that we are having a political discussion surrounding issues.
Yeah.
As I had said earlier, that the Vision 2030 blueprint had intended that we shall have issue-based politics. We can now see their issues along economics, their issues along employment, their issues along addressing the problems that are ailing our nation. So for the first time, political parties have now come to accept that, yes, it is true, we can depart from petty politics of ethnicity and, tribal divisions and just focus on a directional development agenda of the nation.
Yeah.
So what we intend to do with the manifestos is to involve the politicians themselves to actually agree, because government is one. Since we got independence in 1963, government has not changed. Different administrations come and run government, but government has not changed. So we actually have the long-term development plan, which every government, any government that comes into power, should further. They should continue the procedure. They should continue the advancements. So the purpose of launching the manifestos at the moment is to first create a dialogue with the political class, then want them to align their promises. And further, on the second point is to address the Mwananchi, to make Wanjiku have a point of auditing the promise. Because you will come as Trevor with your political promise, which may not even be practical in Kenya. If you're a governor, for example, and you do not have a lake or an ocean in your vicinity, and you're just telling people about blue economy, then that is not practical. So this dialogue will be initiated, and Mwananchi will also be able to question and have an accountability level where then they're able to question. On the same note, once a governor is able to evaluate the economic, the Vision 2030 has three main pillars. There's the economic, there's the social, and there's the political. And then there's the foundational base. When a governor or a president or whoever gets elected to a certain position evaluates their agenda, they must address it on those foundational principles. They must address it on the pillars, because these pillars were what were identified as addressing the needs of Kenya towards putting Kenya at a global leverage. So if a person had a desire and they had many, you can have a wishful manifesto, because a manifesto basically is an intention of how you want to manifest power, which you're looking for. And you get that power and you just do your own things. Maybe you decide that you'll be buying helicopters for your MCAs. That then is not in consonance with what the Vision 2030 requires. So this will be a guide that will bring you back to the path that is directional to improve the quality of life of all Kenyans and to improve the status of Kenya towards the industrialized nation which we had desired.
But 8
so
years,
that
8
we can
years
compete
to go.
globally. 8
years to go, Juliet. How would you rate our move towards achieving Vision 2030? There are many who are saying we've somehow deviated from the road.
I really like that question, because any Kenyan today and any Kenyan who was civically upright in 2008, even just by closing your eyes, you can compare and contrast the situation of your village in 2008 and now. First, we had issues, if we just take examples, for example, the health sector. it was very complicated and very hard to actually get access to a medical facility. The Vision 2030 had desired that at the time the vision is getting realized, every Kenyan will be able to access medical facilities within an 8-kilometer radius. And I can tell you, 60% of the nation right now can access medical facilities and medical health care at the local level. The only places that really are struggling are the places which have not too much, which have very sparse population. For example, the northeastern, I know Marsabit, Turkana, those areas, because again, they have had challenges, and that is what is being addressed through the Equalization Fund. But I can tell you, for example, right now in the social sector, you've seen we have made the pilot studies on the universal health care, for example. That is something that we are all hoping that the social welfare of Kenyans will be improved, and it is already improved. Okay. If you look at the economic side and the infrastructural side, the connectivity, for example, to electricity, it is now the numbers are big. I have the statistics which I can read, but I don't know, in the interest of time. We have had a lot of connectivity, internet, communication. We were launching the report the other time and stating that 90% of Kenyans now are connected to information. You have a mobile phone. Somebody in Turkana has a mobile phone. An old woman of 60 years to 70 years now, actually the statistics were 90% of all Kenyans are able to access a mobile phone, and 60% are able to transact through M-Pesa. That we did not have in 2008. In fact, in 2008, even getting a mobile phone, I mean, the people who are having a mobile phone were maybe the top middle class. Yeah. And it all depends with how we look at it. Okay. If you're able to pinpoint, and I would say, if you just close your eyes for a moment, look at the distance between and the connectivity, the roads that are in your area. How do you access your home place? The roads in this country are well done. Okay. We have a lot of advancements, and only a blind person may not say.
Okay, let me bring in Franklin on this. Franklin, you've seen all the manifestos being launched by the main presidential contenders. The 4 have been cleared so far by IEBC. Have you been impressed by any of them? Or is it that they all have some good and some bad?
I think several things. One is economists say that politicians ought to campaign in poetry and govern in prose. What that means is the manifestos should just give us the what they intend to do. Yeah. And the how can only come out in the course of governance, and that's the prose. In terms of the what, I think we are seeing issues that have been churned out by the various political parties and the various political formations. The priorities are almost similar. Job creation, securing the economy, turning around the economy, issues of social justice, issues of making sure that the vulnerable in society are well taken care of, issues of moving away from consumerism to a little more of production. And those are critical issues. And in terms of diagnosis, we look at them. They have a shared perspective. Some of them have a very interesting, more radical way of looking at it. Others think that you can build on what we have been able to achieve so far. And I think none of them is entirely at fault, other than one which looks quite outrageous, and the other that may not make reasonable sense, because we also consider ourselves as a secular state, and therefore the idea of remunerating a particular group of religious leaders may not, again, be quite sensible. But we have to agree that in terms of getting it clearly what the problem of this country is, I think there's some considerable work that has gone into that by the political parties, and also the work that we have done jointly with the Vision 2030 Delivery Secretariat and the ranges of political parties and the other government agencies. And the basis being that we as a country have a clear framing of what our challenge is in the Constitution, in the Vision 2030, which is our national development blueprint, and other international development and regional development blueprints. And we also have the ambition, stated our vision in these international and local development blueprints. What then we expect of political parties is only they should and they can differ on what are the propositions in terms of resolving these challenges and the ambition that we have as a country. And I think we're seeing an election that increasingly the conversation is becoming that. What are our clear actions about gender equality and social inclusion? What are our actions going to be about moving this country to more production, job creation, reduction of poverty and hunger, dealing with climate action? And this is the conversation that we want. Must political parties be held, accountable to what they are promising? Yes and no, because these are pledges, and the victorious political party can win and determine that they are no longer priorities and implement others. I think the manifestos are critical in the campaign period, in that it helps the electorate to have a conversation and compare the candidates, ideas in terms of solving societal issues. And therefore, there must be a very keen interest in the public, in the electorate, to make sure that they are assessing what these politicians are saying and what exactly makes sense in terms of resolving the societal challenges that are existing now and the potential to come in the future.
Okay. Kevin, you've been across the counties talking to the people on the County Governance Watch. And you've had the manifestos that are being launched by the presidential team. Have their aspirations and needs been captured in any of these manifestos?
Trevor, the answer to that question is yes. And that is because besides the campaigns, political parties have had deliberate attempts made to be able to bring in citizens and residents of the various counties into tables of conversations, either through town hall meetings or sector working groups, meetings with different groupings to be able to pick up their concerns. My biggest worry, however, has been the lack of accountability at two levels. That one, if you look at what is being promised today, there has not been a clear analysis of what was promised in 2013, moving on to 2017, and what was done, which in my view is a VDS responsibility, Vision 2030 Delivery Secretariat, to be able to guide the nation in terms of you are either over-concentrating on infrastructure and you're messing up or not doing a lot in terms of industrialization, because that was really the broader vision, to transform Kenya into a highly industrialized middle-income country that takes care of its people through a clean service delivery mechanism and clean environments. That's really the broader vision. But if you look at the cleanliness in terms of how we are adjudicating and implementing the different manifestos, there is no clear mechanism to therefore look at what we are doing. So you walk through these counties, Trevor, and you are faced with very many white elephants. Projects that were begun either by local governments before devolution came into the fore, post-2010 constitution, and you ask, nani alianzisha hii dam? You'll be told ni councillor wetu, how many years ago, who died, and it was supposed to be passed. We know the amount of monies that were put in these dams, and that just is washed over like that. You move on to aspects that therefore have to do with public participation, where then citizens are also supposed to go through the resource mechanisms. How much budgets do county governments, county assemblies appropriate for these resources? There's a lackluster and very non-committal engagement in terms of, yes, we have put these hundreds of millions and we'll ensure that citizens citizen voices count, and we know that the former governor, for example, had budgeted for this school, and so we are going to enhance, what was not left, and we know that this amount of money was put into it. My government will therefore be able to do this. Instead, what we see happening in counties is people are being told, you didn't vote for me. So you wait for my turn to end, and then maybe when the person that started this comes back, of which I'll assure you they'll not come back, and that's the kind of donation in language that is going on in counties. So we have lots of projects, Trevor, that are within the framework of Kenya Vision 2030 that have been started, they've been budgeted for, but there is never a commitment to be able to ensure that they are completed, and that even the committees and teams, because governors and all these leaders, when they come into place, of course, they'll appoint their friends into some of these committees. And so the people who are then in the previous committees have a very minimal chance in terms of coming forward. But I remember ahead of 2013 elections, while I worked with one of the premier youth organizations in Kenya, we visited the former 8 regions. So we were putting together young people in 100 groups of the 8. So a total of about 800 people. And we were doing what we were calling the Vision 2030 from a youth perspective.
Yeah.
If you do an analysis, because we have done, of what recommendations the youth had then, and what kind of milestones that government has been able to ensure, particularly from a youth perspective. A lot of work has been done. Youth Enterprise Development Fund, of course, there are issues around its requirements, accessibility, and all the concerns that young people have. But at a much more higher level, the questions around accountability are wanting. Our value system is highly questionable, because even most of the projects revolve around corruption, and there are big monies, mega corruption scandals, Trevor, that are never sorted out. So the politics around corruption and the politicization of corruption therefore affects, in my view, even the 8 years that are remaining for Vision 2030. And we can give you many examples, because we have done a little bit engagement with citizens. We have visited areas where projects were begun, and people just don't think that they need to be budgeted for again, from roads to water projects to health facilities. Even the fact that there is over-reliance in physical infrastructure, things that you see like a building or a road, but there are health facilities that you walk into and there are no drugs. Instead,
it's there, but
it's there, but there's nothing inside. From human resource perspectives or elements to the availability of drugs, consumables. So doctors and clients have a conversation around, ukivuka hii barabara, kuna chemist pale. Hatuna hiyo dawa hapa, lakini iko pale. Why should those things be happening? Particularly when health, for example, is fully devolved, and we have lots of monies going to the county governments for some of these services. To water concerns, why are women in 2022 having to go to Tana River? The river is just there. Why can't we have strong mechanisms on how we can be able to reform and transform that water to get into people's homes? So women actually kicking jerrycans over 7 kilometers, with their legs and carrying kids. And this is Vision 8 years into our vision. The promise is real, Trevor, but I think there is much more higher commitment, particularly from the political class.
Yeah, but I'll give you a chance to respond to that, Juliet.
Yes,
this is directly in your doorstep.
Yes, it is.
Am I putting you on the spot?
No. It is an opportunity for us to share information, because I see that there is lack of information out there on what the vision has so far realized. And I want to put it this way, that every year, each of the government institutions, government is big. Government is a conglomerate of many institutions, which we popularly now say, we call it MDAs, which is ministries, departments, and agencies. There are many, there are hundreds. So they are charged to implement the development agenda. The development agenda is implemented in cycles. So every government, and fortunately, it coincides with an election period. In the MTP4 cycles, in the MTP cycles, we had the MTP1 cycle, the MTP2, the MTP3. Right now, we are disseminating information of the successes of MTP3, or the medium-term plan cycle. The medium-term plan cycle, which has been the second term of the Jubilee government, for which President Uhuru has been in power. So there are very well articulated successes per ministry, per MDA, in terms of what was targeted to be done in the 5 years period. But only that, popularly, people discuss the Big Four agenda.
Yeah.
And the Big Four agenda is basically the priority, because any administration that comes into power then have their own priorities. They have an opportunity to choose what is it that they would want to prioritize.
Yeah.
I think moving forward, because even the county governments came in when already the Vision 2030 had been launched and a whole MTP cycle had elapsed. Counties were fast getting themselves ready. But right now, there's a greater opportunity as we move to MTP 4, or the Medium Term Plan 4, which is starting in 2023 to 2027, for even county governments to now also align. So that when you're talking about water and a woman in a place that is remote walking 7 kilometers to get a jerrycan of water, they will engage with their elected governor and tell them that actually we actually need you to sink boreholes for us. There's a case in Nakuru where so many boreholes have been sunk, and at a very minimal cost. I think NEPAD, again through the planning ministry, is also looking at a peer mechanism, what is called a CPRM, the county peer mechanism review process, where counties will be able to benchmark and see what are the successes of this county and vis-a-vis and the money that we have been allocated, so that we can provide services to the people. Okay. Let me just say that the issue of public participation is our civic duty, that as Kenyans, we need to get more aware, we need to even share the information, so that Kenyans then can be able to engage with their elected.
So let's simplify this for Kenyans. You mentioned the Big Four.
Yes.
There's affordable housing, food security, affordable healthcare, manufacturing.
Yes.
In your own assessment, Vision 2030, let's start with affordable housing.
Yes.
What has been achieved? Is it 40%, 60%, 30%? In your own assessment?
In our own assessment, there's data. The target was to get 500,000 units. Through the evaluation, they've been able to get about 46,000. I do not have the particular statistics.
I just wanted to give a general percentage. So out of 100%, how would they?
However, it was a housing issue, and it was, again, it was encompassing, including management of waste. It was also encompassing issues of slum upgrading. So if you actually take it all within that particular MTP cycle, I would think I would rate it above 60%.
Above 60%?
Yes.
Actually, in the president's, the last address he did, he gave it about 60%.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the question, Trevor, continuously is, ziko wapi? Where are they? So affordability and access, that really needs to be, because you know when the president Uhuru Kenyatta came into power and he established the PDU, Presidential Delivery Unit, and we've worked very well with PDU in other quarters, particularly prevention of violent extremism. The expectation was that there would be a very close engagement to be able to speak government promise to the people, which is also lacking in these manifestos. Because, as I said, the political parties and the alliances have done a lot of work to get what I would call research. So they have this wealth of knowledge, information. Why wouldn't you just want to implement it when you're elected either president or governor or MCA or whatever you are? Why would there be now a mixed priorities? Because if you also look at some of the reports that have been churned by both VDS, Vision 2030 Delivery Secretariat, and the PDU, Presidential Delivery Unit, there is a lot of questions that you therefore wish to ask. So my recommendation is break it down into languages that people can be able to understand, and the ability to relate with vitu kwa ground. Because huku juu kwa karatasi, it's written, but kwa ground, as we normally say, Frank, vitu ni totally different. So the communication aspect and how then we relate. Because that's also the biggest question which these manifestos.
In fact, that's the reason why I'm tying into that, because I want you to talk about this model manifesto and how it ties into all this Big Four, because it seems every single manifesto has somehow revolved around that. And Franklin, this is also another issue here. We've talked about affordable housing. According to the Vision 2030, it's 60%. Let's talk about food security, for example. In the World Bank report of 2018, Kenya has 10.19% arable land. But there are still counties right now that are facing drought and starvation. In this manifesto, what's in here that is not in the other manifestos when it comes to food security issues? Is it the how, or is it the what? Is it the when? Why is this the model manifesto that you haven't seen in the others, especially on the food security angle?
The model manifesto is not a manifesto to compete with what political parties are doing. Mm-hmm. It is a guideline for how, because where we're coming from is that as a country we've already diagnosed what our challenge is, and this is available information that is there. As a country, we also have determined what our ambition and what our vision is. And that is articulated in our constitution, that is articulated in Vision 2030, and that is also articulated in terms of the international development blueprints, the Sustainable Development Goals, for instance, the East Africa Community Agenda 2030 and the Africa Union Agenda 2063, which we have subscribed to. And therefore, we are only pointing political parties that, look, whichever political party, and all these political parties have the potential to become government, that whichever political party comes into government, it is important that you align yourself to this diagnosis and this vision and ambition that we have as a society. And therefore, the political parties should differ in their proposals on how to address themselves to the highlighted challenges and our ambition and vision as a country, as articulated in the various development blueprints and the Constitution. In terms of food security, we had a very good beginning, in fact, in 2013, where Jubilee did its best to put the number of acreages under irrigation, but it was a clear corruption that messed the entire irrigation project. We have had reports from the Israel farm that was doing the irrigation project down at the coast, and because of the corruption, you had a scenario where the inputs were higher, than the outputs. So the food crisis, the food security crisis in this country, is an issue of quality inputs and the cost of inputs, the issue of storage, the issue of transport and access to the market. You have a scenario where Trans Nzoia, where I come from, granaries are collapsing under the weight of, harvests of cereals 1-2 years ago. Farmers are struggling with the storage. But next door, in West Pokot, people are starving.
Yeah.
You have occasionally potatoes, rotting on the farms in Nyandarua here, a few kilometers outside of Nairobi, because farmers, there is no value addition, there is no storage mechanism, there is no proper access to market. The inputs are now a problem. You're buying fertilizer for 7,000, but the quality of that fertilizer is not good. Yeah. We devolved agriculture. Has there been sufficient investment in agricultural extension work so that farmers can be supported to do this? So we have the idea, but the doing it is still a little bit tricky, and that is what is costing us.
Okay.
And it's really embarrassing to have discussions on sophisticated development issues when a country cannot be able to feed itself.
Yeah.
It is embarrassing that we continually importing basic food stuff from our neighbors. Yeah. I have tried a hand, Trevor, in poultry farming in my small holding outside of this city.
Yeah.
And the cost of animal feed is mind-boggling. You cannot compete with the poultry products coming in from, Tanzania. You go with your eggs to the market, and if you sold it at the cost of, what's coming in from outside, you will make a loss.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that my parents are struggling with on the farm in Kitale.
Yeah.
That the cost of inputs in 1 acre and the cost of output in terms of the maize harvest is just two different worlds.
Okay.
So how do we address the issue of farm inputs in terms of making them affordable and quality so that the farmers don't have losses.
Yeah.
When there is harvest, is there access to quality storage facilities so that farmers don't have losses? When you have good storage, do you have good access to the market?
Yeah.
In terms of the excesses, do we have, the issue of value addition?
Yeah.
And I think other challenges that we have historical land challenges. Our land tenure system has not been the best.
Yeah.
And that does not aid our capacity to produce sufficient for not just even commercial, but even subsistence.
All right. Let me take some quick feedback here and hear what you're saying in the conversation that we are having. It's about the manifestos, but how it ties in also to the Big Four and the Vision 2030 as well. Let's bring that up and see what you have on air. Evans Wanyela says, I do not trust these manifestos. They're being used by politicians for only one purpose, vote hunting. Angela Razaro says, to me, robust manifestos are just PR, where there's assurance this time round Ruto will deliver. He's the current DP, and the same Ruto whose school laptop programs remains white elephant projects to date. Okay? Botieno says, manifestos are means of luring voters to get power. They are rarely achievable, but for Kenya Kwanza, kudos to them, because theirs resonates well to common wananchi, which is aligned to Vision 2030. All right, let's bring up Kevin on this. And Kevin, on the issue of food security.
Yeah.
So what's going wrong there in that department, based on what you've been talking to the people in the counties and even in the manifestos that you're seeing? Because every issue revolves around this four. Everyone talks about it, but somehow we haven't been able to figure it out.
Yeah. So food security is, of course, must be a major priority for any government. Why is that? It's because if people do not eat, they will die.
Yeah.
You'll be running for office and there will be no one to vote for you because they'll all be dead. Unfortunately, Trevor, and from the conversations that we have had and what we have seen happen, this big animal called corruption, and what is this thing called? Conflict of interest, of people who are supposed to be both legislators, policymakers, and they also want to be middlemen. They want to be the suppliers. They also want to be sellers, where they produce, they sell fertilizers. And so the question then that begs from many people's perspectives is, whose role is it to be able to ensure that we have effective policies when the same parliamentarian or the same CEC is the same person who wants to supply eggs, who wants to supply fertilizers? At the national level, we have conversations around opportunities for value addition. And so if you look at the stories then that people understand is, our maize, as Frank says, is that Trans Nzoia, and one of the biggest bread baskets of Kenya actually is Trans Nzoia County. But farmers there don't feel it. And if you talk to them, like one of the speakers said, one of the comments, it's purely political. They come here, they say we are going to inject 1 billion shillings on Mumia's sugar.
Yeah.
But there is no investment in terms of when you go back to Nairobi in your choppers, what do you leave the farmer with to ensure that I have proper soil type to be able to grow this sugarcane that is supposed to grow in, say, 8 to 12 to 18 months? There are places they call nucleus. A lot of these nucleus, where in fact the harvest is much more richer and much more expensive, are owned by the same people I'm talking about, the political class. And the people who breed from the nucleus are the ones who are normally given the first priorities to be able to supply to the sugar millers. So corruption, therefore, Trevor, in my view, is one of the things that we must make deliberate attempts and efforts to deal with. And if you look at the interests of Kenyans in terms of fighting corruption, it reminds me of 2002, 2003. May God rest his soul in peace, President Mwai Kibaki, when Kenyans actually were even arresting police officers instead of the vice versa for picking monies and for, playing into corruption. But moving fast forward to today, the more money you have, which is actually supposed to be clean money, is corruption money. But the more you have, the higher chances for you to get your produce sold, the higher chances for you to get to, bribe somebody to get a market, and the higher chances also to get other produce into the country. So we've had stories of rice from Brazil. We've had stories from maize from other parts of the countries by politicians.
Yeah.
So why that happens, of course, is just lack of mere interest. Because even as we talk about manifestos, we are now promising Kenyans to put billions of Kenya shillings into agriculture sector.
Yeah.
But we are not talking about the fully devolving that particular function.
Yeah.
Because national government is supposed to have interest in national legislation and policies that then counties domesticate and counties are able to use to be able to increase productivity and make farmers effective and efficient. You go to Muranga here, where milk is being poured off, is being poured away by farmers simply because, Trevor, there is no market for it. But if you walk into the shops, maziwa today is 85 shillings plus from 35 shillings, you know. So there's a whole lot of conversation from the manifestos in terms of the promise to the how, and particularly in terms of how to deal with corruption, which to me, and listening to people from the ground, because we have helped some of the citizens to write some of these documents where they have made presentations to the political class when they go to their counties.
Yeah.
And so the recommendations are very clear based on their experiences.
Okay.
But then the commitment to be able to fast track, to deal with that aspect of corruption has been the biggest question.
Yeah, Juliet, in your view, what has been the greatest disadvantage? What is the biggest challenge, especially when it comes to this issue of food security, and what has been achieved as well? Because I know there's an entire chapter there of ending drought, but we're still talking about drought.
Yes. And I think the perspective, Trevor, on food needs to be reorganized, because food is so basic. Food is a basic right. It's actually a basic need. If people do not feed, then they will not engage. They will not even be able to work. They'll not even be able to deliver. The crisis that we have had is basically as a result of how our farming methods are, how we manage our agriculture. As well, there's a lot of climate conditions that are coming in, and we are not able to then factor. We have had a lot of reliance on rain-fed agriculture. Yeah. It is time that we need to move, and the innovation that the Vision 2030 had desired was that there would be innovation and commercially oriented agriculture. And innovation is what we haven't even seen a lot of investment, even through the counties. Because there are counties that have vast land, yet they have not innovated in maybe mechanizing and incorporating even the youth population to do farming. Yeah. We need to change our perspective on agriculture. We need to prioritize food. We need to prioritize the agenda, and we need to improve the support, targeting specific value chain, so that in the value chain, the issue of the market, that we have potatoes and we have milk, that we have a milk glut, and the other side, you're buying a liter at almost 100 shillings. Yeah. We actually then need to have a complete change in how we prospectively look at the value chain. Yeah. We also need new interventions to boost productivity. We've seen government, again, I'll just mention the flagship projects. The other day, we just completed Viba Dam, so that we could enhance the production of rice in Kenya. And the production of rice, actually, even in the last MTP, has almost doubled. And that then reduces the cost of importation, because then we do not have to import a lot of rice to Kenya.
But on that same breath, we see the failure of Galana Kulalu.
Yes, and which Galana Kulalu, at the best of it, is a point to learn, because we actually also at Vision 2030 identify the bottlenecks. What is it that has not worked and why? So that then we are able in future, because Kenya is progressive. This is a nation that is in motion. Populations are growing. We are still getting more children, and we are a going concern. So we may not want to say it failed, and so therefore irrigation fails. We learn from that and we correct the mistakes, and we move forward looking at how to address. But food is an issue that I think needs to be looked at, including with the reset of the budget. That how much then are we investing for agriculture and food.
All right.
Indeed, the GDP ratio that agriculture was supposed to contribute in the economic growth, we had hoped that we'll have a sustained economic growth of 10%. It is high time that we invest more resources into agriculture so that we can provide food, so that we have food sufficient, and two, so that we can still contribute to the economic agenda. It will not be good for the next government to not prioritize in there. We may not talk about the Big Four agenda because the Big Four agenda was for the 2017-2022 administration of Jubilee government. So the next government that comes into power on 9th August then should prioritize food and prioritize strategies that are key in addressing the food issues. Yes.
Franklin, we're running out of time here, but I'd like to get your closing remarks on how do we hold the political class accountable to all the promises that they make? Because the truth is, it's not that the country doesn't know what our problems are. We know what our problems are. We even have the possible solutions on paper. It's the implementation that's a problem. But as we finish on this conversation, so how can the people hold the political class accountable to everything that they promise?
The process of an organization hiring its personnel, like in the case of Royal Media Services, HR department hiring the personnel to move forward the company, cannot be conducted in an acrimonious, violent way. And Kenyans must stick out their neck for, one, making sure that they are not manipulable and responsive to the interests of the elite, so that we can have a clear debate. And I disagree with the gentleman that said the manifestos mean nothing, because that is the beginning of a lazy argument, and I do not want to push it forward, other than challenge him and say we need a conducive environment for us to engage in reasoned arguments over and about the social contract. And the social contract that we're entering, which is the process of hiring the leaders, the officers that will, the chief executive and the other team members that will run this country for the next 5 years, must be a conversation about what government must do and what government must not do on one end, and what are the civic obligations and responsibilities. And I want to focus on the civic obligations and responsibilities. And that is making sure that, one, we are listening to all available suggestions and asking the right questions, because we are not focusing on 9th. We are focusing on the next 5 years. The only other opportunity we will have to change the team that we are putting in place is in August 2027. So let us focus on the period between 9th of August 2022 and 9th and August, the second Tuesday of August 2027. That period is a very long time. If you are 35 today, you will be 40 in 2027. That is a lot of time that you need to have made progress. And therefore, that decision of what government should do and what government should not do, must be very clearly approached from the perspective of what is my civic duty and what is my civic obligation. Government will make sure that, Trevor, you have paid taxes, because it's your obligation. And now what is your responsibility is to make sure that the people you're putting in charge to tax you and use those taxes actually meet the highest threshold of a competitive employee that is suitably qualified to move this organization that is called Kenya to the next level. It behooves Kenyans to have a sober reflection. It cannot be an idea of just ping pong. We must ask ourselves, are the people we are putting in charge even better than ourselves?
All right. Kevin Osido, your closing remarks on this. How do we hold the political class accountable to the manifestos that they put forth?
One of the things that we have been doing as County Governance Watch is to help citizens deal with the exact question that Franklin is raising around my role and my responsibility. So we have what we call the Governance Index, which assesses performance of counties. But how it starts is from a sector mechanism or sector working group. So citizens whose interest is in water. Like you see, I have a report from Kakamega County in May, where a budget was actually done for trenches, floods and all that in 2016. And citizens there even know how much money, because these things are done in public. But we are talking 2022, and they are still sharing the same photos of the same dam, which should have been done many years ago. So what we do is, of course, social accountability, helping them to understand their roles, and of course, how to engage with the county governments. Because there's a way you also present yourself to the chief officer of water, and he or she does not just outright like you because of how you also carry yourself. So the Constitution empowers citizens through Article 1.1, that sovereign power. So we help them to write petitions, letters to the governor, letters to this and that officer. But bottom line is that interest and availability of information. In fact, I want to ask that we engage with Juliet so that we can share with her through those MDS, you know, because VDS needs to enhance public education, public communication, and have a partnership with citizens to be able to also share information so that they do something about it. So manifestos are critical. They give us an opportunity to vet and also look at whoever we want to vote for in office. But the biggest responsibility lies on the citizen. Let's go, as we head to the election in 33 days, ask ourselves whose manifesto resonates with our issues and who has been able to tackle the concerns that are realistic, because some of these things are wishful thinking. Within the context of Kenya, some of the big billions of monies to trillions that are being discussed against our negative 10.9 trillion debt burden is not feasible for the next 33 years, Trevor. So our kids today will continue to pay 110,000 plus even before they are born. And so what is the future of our children and our children's children? But of course, lastly, is to appeal to the political class that as we head to the elections, please let us be peaceful. Kenyans do not want a repeat of 2007, a bit of 2013 and 2017. Let's exercise cohesion. Let's love each other, because there is Kenya after August 9.
All right,
Thank you.
Juliet, you have closing remarks.
Yes.
Are we really achieving this by 2030 in your own view?
Yes.
Everything we set out to achieve.
We may not get to 100%, but I think we are on track. There's great opportunity, Trevor, in terms of engaging the political class even after they get into power, so that they're able then to prioritize in terms of setting the agenda. What I like at the moment is that we have now set a foundation for dialogue. As you can see, Mwananchi is commenting, is saying that, yes, I am auditing. Do those manifestos resonate with me? Mwananchi is also saying there was a manifesto that was done and it didn't address the issues that had been promised. They didn't keep the promise. So we are at a good place because Kenyans discuss elections and politics just close to the elections. If you brought this debate of manifestos in 2021, when we had struggles with COVID and resilience on other issues, it wouldn't have gotten any attraction. But right now, we have successfully laid a foundation for a dialogue on what is the promise that the political class are giving. Second, we are now ourselves as Vision 2030 also now giving a directional path to the political class, telling them that government is one, government must continue. Government must not go backwards. That is why we are sharing the data and the statistics of what so far has been achieved through the MTP cycles up to MTP3. So that you come into power, you do not take back. You do not, where there used to be a road, we do not want to come and find potholes, Trevor. We want you to now come and increase the number of kilometers that will have access into that. So moving forward, I believe that civic education is going on. Even such a forum today is still educating Kenyans. We need Kenyans to also get their priorities right. At the county, there's an opportunity to engage as they construct, again, within the MTP cycle, what is called the CIDP, the County Integrated Development Plans. If Mwananchi at that level is able to prioritize their needs and state it to the governor, then they will also have a mechanism of putting that governor to account. And I want to highlight, I think there's a Vihiga County, they published their audit of what they have succeeded within their manifesto when they promised in 2017 and what they have done now. If each governor would be able to point that this is my manifesto beginning 2022 and audit it continuously so that by 2027, when we are going to the next election, then they would use that manifesto as a bargain tool for re-election. Then manifestos would have been entrenched and would have lived it. My final comment is that Kenya belongs to us. This is our nation. And as we hope and trust that we are going to improve the quality of life for all Kenyans, we need to do it with love. Let us promote love for our nation. Yes, let us promote love. It's patriotism. It's one of our national values. Yes.
Kevin, I see
together,
you have like 10 seconds.
Yeah, because
together we can.
Because Juliet mentioned something very important, and we need to be careful about it as well, that these manifestos need to align with the county integrated development plan. Because that is how the budget of the counties and even at the national level is actually done. So anything outside the CIDP, whether it is bringing the moon to the ground, it will not be budgeted.
It should happen. Okay. Let's see some of your feedback as we close on this conversation and make space for Willis Bazura Buru's coming up. So Frank Orinde says this time round, politics is slightly taking a different twist into the right direction. If the manifestos is anything to go by, it's now up to those who will win to implement theirs. Kenyans should be woke to hold politicians accountable and reject the liars. Okay? Eligater says, Trevor, our investigative system is what is failing Kenyans. The judicial system is failing us. We actually need to disband them. Its attachment to the executive will always eat us. We can't fight corruption while they work hand in hand with the executive. All right. All right. That's where we leave it for now. Let's see. Franklin Mkwanja, Executive Director, CMD, Center for Multi-Party Democracies. Thank you so much for making time. Kevin Osido, Executive Director, County Governance Watch, and Juliet Murimi, Deputy Director, Social and Political Pillar, Vision 2030. Coming up next now is a conversation on health and lifestyle. Dr. Laura Shiundu is here. They're talking about kidney and bladder health. Join Willis Bazura Buru for that conversation in just a bit, all right? See you shortly.